What a nice and powerful Zazen Sesshin we're in the midst of here. A very strong morning, chanting the Fukanza Zengi in the morning, clear direction from our lineage teachers on how to hold our practice, body and mind. So it feels quite strong and deepening moment by moment. What are we doing here? What are you doing here? It serves to be clear on this question, as clear as you can on this question. So I'd like to share some of my perspective and my orientation on this. I started this morning with the teaching from Dogen. We don't practice in order to become enlightened. We practice because we are enlightened. This is such a profound teaching. I've found over the course of my life that my understanding of this teaching has gone from very shallow to deep. And it's taken me years, even decades, to really grok this teaching, which comes through in many, many, many great Zen teachers. It's just Dogen gave a really pithy expression of it here. We're not trying to become enlightened. We practice because we are enlightened. So what's your level of confidence, level of belief in this? I know in the early stages of my practice, I might have heard this, I'm sure I did, in one way or another, but most of my belief was in the realm of, no, I'm practicing to become enlightened. I'm trying to change. I'm trying to become something that I'm not. I'm trying to have a shift in my personality. I'm trying to change something about who I am or how I function in the world. If I were honest with myself, that's where the center of my belief system was, really. And then maybe on the edges, I had a kind of a whisper of something. I'm like, wow, maybe not. Maybe I really am enlightened. Maybe my life really is the life of the Buddha. But it took years, decades even, for that part of it, that deepest truth to ground in me, for that heart of confidence to really come forth, so I could see that. And I can say that with utter conviction that that's the truth of our practice. That's what an awakened person does, is practice. It's very interesting and it's very mysterious. There might come a time for you, there came a time for me, and it was decades into my practice when I started having glimpses that all of the practice I had done over the years didn't produce whatever level of awakeness I had managed to bring forth. And I asked myself, so did I not have to do all of that Zazen? And there was a deep knowingness that I didn't have to do all that Zazen. It was 100% true. I didn't have to do all that. But right together with that was, but of course, that's what I do. And I could even look back and I could say, this quality of awakeness, whatever I had, whatever I have, I look back and I say, would I have this without having done that practice? No. I wouldn't. So that was 100% true too. So both of those things are 100% true. It's quite mysterious. So what are we doing here? This question of why are we practicing is an important one to clarify. And in fact, it is the question that brought Dogen to China. He'd been practicing, he's a religious genius, spiritual genius. So he had insights from a young age. But come, 27 or 28 years old, and he does have this question of why, why are we doing this? What's going on here? And in his 4 years, I think it was in China, he was able to resolve, that question so that he could come back and write in, Fukan Zazengi, which we read this morning, and then in Genjokoan, which was his third major work after coming back. That your life is the life of the Buddha. That practice and enlightenment are one. So he addresses this in a part of the Genjokoan I'm going to share. Genjokoan is translated as actualizing the fundamental point. Okay. And this is the fundamental point, that your life is the life of the Buddha, that you right now are living the awakened life. But what's the relationship of practice to that? And what does that mean? So the whole first part of the Genjokoan, most of the Genjokoan is about what really does that mean? What is enlightenment? What is delusion? And I've spoken about this a lot, but I want to share it briefly. He says that enlightenment, or I'll start with delusion. Delusion is when a self experiences the world. That's delusion. So you could say it's a self-centered experiencing of the world. Okay? But when the world experiences itself, that's enlightenment. When the world experiences itself through you or as you, that's enlightenment. So it's the world that is selving, not the individual self that is selving and experiencing. It's the world, and the world I'm using for the 10,000 dharmas, the myriad things, phenomena. Japanese word is banpo. The world in all its phenomenal arising selves through you and as you, experiencing itself through you and as you. So it doesn't mean you don't have a personality. It doesn't mean we don't have selves. It just means that these selves are phenomenal arisings as the world experiences itself. We're just a part of it. We're not at the center of it. So you know from your own experience, your own life, and your own practice, that to live from a self-centered place is very different from living from a world-centered place. It feels different, your responsiveness is different, and your effect on the world and people and others is vastly different. So practice. At the end of the Genjokoan, Dogen tells a story that had been passed down about an earlier teacher, Mayu. And Mayu was a student and a successor of Baso, Matsu, which I think, if I have my years right, was about 400 years before Dogen lived. So I'm always just impressed and gratified and amazed how, these teachers, which for us was 800 years ago, are reaching back 400 years to these conversations that happened. For us, it would be a conversation that happened in 1600, and we're still like, wow, that's it. Whoa, and here we are 1200 years later, sharing the same story because it's so crystalline. So Zen master Mayu was waving a fan. A monk approached him and asked, "The nature of wind is ever present and permeates everywhere. Why are you waving a fan?" The master said, "You know only that wind's nature is ever present. You don't know that it permeates everywhere." The monk said, "How does wind permeate everywhere?" The master just continued waving the fan. The monk bowed deeply. So you probably got some sense of, what's going on here, in the monk's question. So the wind is ever present. Why are you waving the fan? Buddha nature is ever present and permeates everywhere. Why do you practice? Okay, why do you augment that? Right? Isn't that extra? Is that extra what you're doing since the wind is ever present? And Mayu's answer is very subtle and discerning. He says, you understand that the wind is ever present, i.e. that Buddha nature is everywhere. But you're missing something about it permeating everywhere. What's he missing? If it's permeating everywhere, it's permeating Mayu, Fanning. Buddha nature permeates everywhere, including practice. In fact, fan, wind, practice, Buddha nature. Practice brings forth Buddha nature. So that's the spirit that I want to, convey for you in your practice. I know that to a certain level, you've got a sense of, I'm going to practice in order to get this, to make this happen. It's just very natural. And it does take time to really feel and see, this deeper aspect of it. And that's okay. It's totally okay. Because it does actually produce, effects and changes. That's true. That's true. But that's not the deepest reason why we practice. It's a good reason to practice. But the deepest reason is because that's your nature, is to be non-reactive, non-judgmental, still, transparent, sensitive, available to what is and to what is needed. Our practice is always about becoming very intimate with our own ways. Like Dogen says in that Fukan Zazengi, take the backward step and turn the light inward. Right? The externals are kind of managed by a mind of expectation and goal and plan and agenda and accomplishment. But the inward turn looks at the mindset, the attitude, the intention, and the desire, the yearnings. Those are the important things to pay attention to. And you have a great deal of influence over those things. Your mindset that you bring to the world and others. Your intentions with your life. Your yearnings in your life. Your desires at the deepest level. Your deep yearnings. Where do you seek connection? Where do you seek belonging? Where do you seek an opportunity for creativity, for freedom? And these are the things to pay attention to. But never separating yourself from the phenomena of your own life. Right? It's not like it's separate. And in a way, it's not even secret. It just gets covered up by the self-centered mind. The self-centered mind is an off-center mind. So things get, put in orbit around a false sun. We just have developed these habits of operating from the self-centered place. So, and then they go on autopilot and they keep us from being sensitive, to what's going on with the world and with others, keep us from being sensitive to what's going on even within ourselves. When we've got some idea of how we're supposed to be or how others are supposed to be. So practice does always require these plunges. It's the word that Bernie used for his These retreats, bearing witness retreats, it's a plunge. Take a step out of the known, out of the safe, out of the familiar, and put yourself into an environment where the world is present for you every moment, where you're alive to the world, its beauty, its vulnerability, its pain. It's very intense. We're very intense beings. A lot of power, a lot of energy available within these heart minds. Incredible power. It tends to be bound up in our structures, emotional habit patterns. So the plunge puts us into that place of the unknown where we're falling through space. Heart starts beating. Mind is, what's going on? Very curious and alert. We can have this quality, something of this quality, in our session here. Really take a step off of your familiar patterns. Don't be afraid to face your strong emotions, strong feelings. It's very safe, much safer than, say a street retreat. So this is practice. Be fully alive every moment. Okay. The posture prescriptions that Dogen gives in Fukan Zazengi, it's just an aid, to help us. There's nothing, mystical about it, but it's when you practice, you're really manifesting your deepest true self. You're really having contact with the stillness and the silence. And grounding yourself in the stillness and the silence. Not grounding your personality self, grounding your big self. The ground of stillness and silence, then the world selves as you and through you. Then grounded there, whatever you do is practice. Yeah, you have to hold that frame. You have to hold that intention, practice, that mind of practice. And then in time, no matter what you do, will be that. It'll be very natural. Very natural. You don't have to do anything in particular. Whatever you do is from the mind of practice. But that takes time. It takes years to really fully internalize that. It's it takes time. Yeah. And be patient with yourself and don't try to push anything. Just accept yourself every day. I just got, like, oh God, why am I talking like this? just wanted to reel back, a whole bunch of what I just said for fear that it's, all right, I'm going to do that. No, don't. Just practice. Yeah, just practice. As strong as you can with your heart of joy, and your commitment, and your heart of vow. Yeah, it'll work out. Okay, thank you for your attention.